another question that I was often asked when I was preparing people and students professionally was, how much of a difference is there between levels? And the reality is that the difference is huge. So even though you might think, well, should I do a B1 or should I do a B2? Is there really that big of a difference between B2 and C1? The answer is yes. The steps are massive in terms of difference. Clearly, the C levels are extremely high. They are advanced. Proficiency is how you call C2. C2, I'll be honest with you, if you are a native speaker, you'll pass it. But if you're an uneducated native speaker, you'll fail it. This is how C2, how complex C2 is. And when it comes to C1, it is a very advanced type of English, and when it comes to the expectations of vocabulary, modal verbs, phrasal verbs, expressions, interjections, grammar, you pretty much have to know all grammar for C levels, regardless. And then B1, the A levels are very simple, and what A1 is like, hello, good morning, how are you? Like very, very basic, good for kids or for a complete beginner, just to give them a little bit the experience. And A2, it's still quite simple, but you already have to be able to use some grammar, know a little bit of special verbs, we could say, that are a tiny bit less basic. You do need to know your vocabulary relatively well, and the B levels are where the situation starts to become within the realm of more of an intermediate type of English, lower intermediate all the way up to upper intermediate. And really a B2 can be quite complicated, and there is a monstrous difference between B1 and B2 when it comes to the number of, for instance, phrasal verbs, modal verbs and expressions that you are required to know in order to even attempt. Now, does it make sense to even try and start with the low levels, or should you just skip them and go for something that you can actually use, such as a B2? Because for work, usually it's from B2 upwards, depending on the type of job. And the reality is, I would still suggest, if you're a complete beginner, I would suggest to give it a try with the A levels, particularly if you're an anxious type. If you're someone who needs to get used to the idea of taking these sort of tests, then you get performance anxiety, then I would say do it, get used to it, particularly if you have it's not like that they cost thousands of dollars, usually it's a couple of $100, but then again, it's still money. So if you have the possibility, I would say do it. Do it as an experience, do an A2, maybe do a B1, and then move step by step towards B2. But if you're already pretty good, and you see you're relatively close to B2, like if you study another 6 months, you could take the B2. Should you try a B1? Once again, if you don't have that sort of performance anxiety, if you already have experience with tests, I would say wait and do the B2. But if you have zero experience in how the tests work, then I would strongly suggest, no, maybe start with the B1 first, take the test, make the experience, and that way your first experience is going to be a little easier, and then you can sort of graduate into something a bit harder. For me, I went directly for C2, but that is because I had lived in England. I had already had the experience. I was already fluent, and all I needed to do was to learn the mechanics, brush up the grammar, make sure my spelling was okay, and I was ready to go. So it's really one of those situations where it's a case-by-case scenario, and I will make dedicated videos to help you assess yourself with indicators that can help you out. Oh, okay, I definitely fit in this box. You'll have to be honest with yourself, because a lot of the times we like to say, no, I think I'm a B2, but the person who's saying it doesn't know what a B2 actually means and what sort of expectations you have and that sort of stuff.